This is the Pennsylvania Report with State Senator Art Haywood. The Pennsylvania Report, a look at your state government working for the future of Philadelphia and Montgomery County. Hi, thanks for joining us. We're talking with Senator Haywood about preparation for something that may not ever come or may come surprisingly to you when you're not even expecting it. It's something called a disaster, and the disaster could come in the form of a flood, a fire, anything like that. We've even actually had earthquakes here in Pennsylvania, and people who know about that and about how to prepare for it are with us as well. We have Rick Flinn, who is director of the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, and Tim Solobay, who is the state fire marshal. And let's talk about whether or not people are ready. This is a book. It's called Are You Ready? It's something that's put out by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and you can get a copy of this if you go online, or the senator will make it available through his offices. But basically, we have had a lot of situations recently, Senator, out in the western part of the country where people have lost homes due to fire and flooding. We've had flooding here in this state as well. It's something that you usually don't think about is going to happen to you, but you have to be ready for it.
Yes, and it can happen, even not just in the western part of the United States, but in my district, there have been instances of flooding. Back in 2011, there was tremendous flooding in Cheltenham Township, directly related to Tropical Storm Lee and Hurricane Irene. And so we had to prepare for these kind of incidents, and I'm so glad we have experts here to tell us and citizens how to prepare, whether that's just having a first aid kit in your car, as well as many other actions that can be taken. And let me ask you, sir, I'm so glad you're able to make it.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
Could you share with us some of the basic tips that citizens should be aware of to prepare for the unexpected?
Thank you. This is National Preparedness Month, and PEMA, the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, along with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, really trying to get the message out to the citizens to be able to, in fact, be prepared. And I'll say that from the perspective that our mission is to be able to stabilize any incident within 72 hours. Caveat to it is that the public needs to do what they need to do to take care of themselves within that 72 hours. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, unfortunately, we just saw in the news this overnight that 16 personnel people were killed in flash flooding. And I think that's kind of the point that needed to be made. In addition to, part of preparedness is having a system to be able to be warned. Now, most people carry cell phones. Most people have the NOAA alerts on their cell phones, but if you don't, get that for sure. A weather radio is critical. Just you can go and pick them up at any Radio Shack or type of store that it'll go off when a weather warning comes into play. And I'll tell you the frustration that we all have in emergency management is that if you're not used to disasters, no notice type events as we call them, people become complacent. You know, when in fact, from a television perspective, the FCC requires that when there's a tornado warning, that the local stations break in and they'll stay on the air until that warning's done. The challenge is the public will go, oh, let me go outside and look at this tornado. You know, as opposed to doing what you should do. And you know, I'll take it even one step further. If you don't have a basement, and I worked for FEMA, I had the opportunity to go to Tuscaloosa a few years ago. And the devastation tornadoes can bring is absolutely incredible. Those people understand it, though. They follow it very closely, and that's why less lives are not seriously injured or fatalities occur. But I'm concerned about from Pennsylvania's perspective. We don't get a lot of tornadoes, but if you get those tornado warnings, even if it's a simple thing of getting yourself into a room where there's no windows, and you have little kids, put a baseball helmet on them, put a football helmet on them, little things like that to protect them, get them in the tub. You know, that's just an example from a tornado perspective. So the concern is in fact those no notice type events. Flash flooding is more of a noticed event. The Weather Service gives it, but just as I said, you know, people drive in water that they shouldn't be driving in. And that's exactly what occurred in Utah last night, where you had people swept away. So there are many things, and I'll stop and I'll come back, but give the fire commissioner, because obviously Fire Prevention Month is next month, but there are many things that the public can do, but very first thing is have the ability to receive the information, whether it's through apps on your cell phone, because again, many of the television stations have those, or have a weather radio, and then in that sense, you are able to take the information you have and then take action. Prior to that, you need to get prepared. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but I'll give the commissioner.
And the unique thing, and Rick had mentioned, there's apps you can put on your phone, and everybody now is tech savvy. I was sitting at a restaurant a while back, and everybody's phones started going off because there were some bad storms coming through the area. There were some tornado warnings, so you hear the thing going off on everybody's cell phones at that facility. But we've talked so far a little bit about weather, non-man-made related incidents that occur, but there's also a significant number of man-made incidents that could also cause disasters. And as Rick said, the mission of PEMA is to get things under control within 3 days. So a unique thing in preparation is having necessary items that you may need to get through for 3 days. There's these nice big Tupperware containers you can put in water, non-perishable foods, batteries, the radio, different flashlights, things like that are available. But you put it away somewhere where if you need to get to it. But don't forget, because sometimes you got to change those things out as well. And the unique thing people don't always remember is in some disaster situations when the power and things are out, also put a little pouch of money aside, because sometimes you can't get the money. And not like the situation that went on in Greece a few months ago where the bank shut down. But if the ITM, everybody's used to an ITM. If you can't get to it, you can't get money. You have it. So those little kind of things, and they're really spelled out in that booklet that was referenced earlier to do things. So man-made and unfortunately natural disasters occur, and oftentimes you don't know when they're going to happen.
And I'm so glad you raised the framework that citizens should look for some level of self-reliance for about 72 hours. And then the cavalry will come in at least by then to save the day. But there's a level of self-reliance that we've got to have. And I think that's critical. And so if people have the orientation, I got to make it for up to 3 days. That will help create the orientation to be prepared. That's a critical point. I also know, since we've got the fire commissioner here, that there's a significant role in the Commonwealth, in some of our communities, and particularly those I represent in Montgomery County, for emergency responders who are volunteers. We have volunteer firefighters in Cheltenham Township, Springfield, Abington, Jenkintown. What's the status of the volunteer firefighting force around the state?
Well, as you mentioned, probably 90% of the physical surface of Pennsylvania is covered by volunteer firefighters. When you get into the larger cities and some of the more affluent communities, they may have a full career staff or a partial career staff. But there is a crisis right now in the volunteer fire status as far as manpower. Years ago, and I'll go back probably 30, 40 years ago, when Rick and I first got started in the fire business, we had 300,000 men and women that were willing to volunteer for their communities. Now we're down to 1/6 of that number, roughly around 50,000 members that are still willing to go out and work in their communities. And the upgraded number, people don't realize the amount of money saved by the volunteer service. It's now estimated up to almost near $9 billion of tax dollars it would take to replace those volunteers with career personnel if the volunteers finally threw their hands up and said, what, we're not getting any help, cooperation. So there is a crisis. We're working on that. Governor Wolf has really embraced the fact of public safety, public service in the Commonwealth, and has been working with both of our agencies to try to make sure we can do things to enhance that. We're hoping to move forward on some ideas real soon, but the long and the short of it is we do have a crisis right now in Pennsylvania, and it's one of the old scenarios of pay now to local elected officials about helping these folks out, or you're going to pay a whole lot more down the road. And I'm not sure how much the residents and the citizens of the Commonwealth are going to be appreciated if they get handed much larger tax bills because there's been no support for the volunteers.
Yeah, and I know that in the communities that have been relying on volunteer firefighters for years, the taxpayers would be shocked to have to cover the expense of that kind of item.
Yes, sir.
And I'm thinking now of the connection between emergency preparedness and the first responders, and to what extent emergency preparedness can really assist the first responders. Rick, how do you see the relationship between those two?
The first responders are the point of the spear for any disaster. All disasters are local, and so where FEMA's mission is to support the state and the governor, PEMA's mission is to support the county and the county commissioners, who then now support the locals. Okay, so Tom Sullivan is the emergency management coordinator for Montgomery County. Outstanding program that you have in Montgomery County, and obviously in Philadelphia also, and so from the public's perspective, that county emergency management agency is there through their local, and let me back up, you said Cheltenham, every municipality is required to have an emergency management coordinator, an emergency management plan, an emergency operations center, and they all do, and they rely heavily on the community. You know, again, going back to the first responder perspective, and I addressed the first responders at a service in York just over the weekend, they are absolutely critical, and to be able to go ahead and they deal with disasters every day. Many disasters occur every day. And frankly, the things that I lose sleep over are the catastrophic type events, that it overwhelms those communities, overwhelms the counties, and then multiple counties. And then we actually have to get to the point where it overwhelms the state, and we have to call the federal assistance in. But in answer to your question, sir, the first responders and you know, frankly, a lot of the emergency management coordinators are volunteers also. Not, you know, I think the majority throughout the Commonwealth of all the municipalities are in fact volunteers who take the time and effort to take the training to help coordinate, develop plans, and get their citizens prepared. And that's our theme. Preparing the citizens for anything that can occur. You know, and I just wanted to mention real quick, you know, going back to some of the other things. We know you should have at least a gallon of water for everyone every day. You should stock up some food. You should be able to, if you have to shelter in your house, you need to have those supplies. Fire Commissioner mentioned the idea that our biggest challenge in any kind of event is power outages. One of the things that probably causes more fatalities after a storm is that people don't know how to use generators. They'll go out and buy a generator at Home Depot or Lowe's, put it in their garage, not have the garage door open, and they'll die of carbon monoxide. That's a big concern. But having a generator is a good thing. But take it one step further, we all rely on our cell phones. We all rely on that electronic thing. Having a car charger to be able to charge your phone is critical, because you're not going to be able to charge your phone if the power's out for a few days. We also talked about many things in relationship to having a plan. And one of the things they found in these catastrophic events like Katrina and such, that when people have to be evacuated, sometimes they get separated from their families. If there's a separation process occurs, it's always good to be able to have the ability to contact someone, another family member outside of the area, outside of the state. Hey, I'm okay, this is where I am, type of thing, because that communication is also very, very difficult. Pets are a big issue. The federal government required us to go ahead and ensure that all emergency plans include pets, because we all have pets. We don't want to leave our pets at home.
That's right.
So, and there are many shelters that will not permit pets. So PEMA and the State Emergency Management Agency work with the Department of Agriculture has worked with, develop these county animal rescue teams. And they're deployed and activated to be able to have set up pet shelters. Understanding where those are, paying attention to the communications that occur during pre-event and during event is just as critical as being prepared before an event happens.
Now, if people haven't been taking notes over the last couple of minutes, Director, where could people go online to get some of this information from your office?
Absolutely, and Pennsylvania has followed the federal initiative, and we also have the program associated with Ready.PA. It's Ready PA, and it's www.readypa.org. www.readypa.org. On that site, it'll talk to you not only about what be prepared, but if you want to be, how to be involved. we created Citizens Corps a few years ago that takes individuals, trains them on basic types of first aid, basic type of how to use a fire extinguisher, understanding how to turn off your power. It all started from the earthquakes in California years ago, where you couldn't get enough first responders to communities. And the big thing is you got to shut off the gas lines, you got to shut off the water, those things. So that program has evolved, and we have that program in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, communicating with Tom Sullivan, Montgomery County, and Sam Phillips in Philadelphia, and their emergency operations management agencies. They will provide you with the assistance. But www.ready.pa.org. Be prepared, be involved, Citizen Corps, and be informed. And those are the three messages that we try to push out.
And Commissioner Solobay, what about your office? Where can people get a hold of you?
Sure. Well, the Fire Commissioner's Office, we have both a website. If they go under Pennsylvania State Fire Commissioner, it will on the web. It'll bring up the actual web page, which we put a lot of information on. Also Facebook. So we're hitting all the social media things.
Good.
But yeah, Pennsylvania State Fire Commissioner would access that, and we'll be able to put some things that you could put up on the screen a little later on. But then also on the public education, public awareness, we put messages, especially on the Facebook site and the webpage, because there's people always looking at that. Granted, oftentimes it's their emergency service providers, but we also notice that there's general public jumps on there as well.
And Senator, if people didn't take notes on that, they can always come to your office. And
Yes,
check
come to
things
my
out.
office or our website, www.senatorhaywood.com. And we're on Facebook and social media as well. And I think we should also highlight here near the end of the program that this is Emergency Preparedness Month. So this is one time where we can focus on getting ready, knowing that each citizen's got up to 72 hours and have a plan for that. And I think if we do that, that'll add lives, save lives, and add longevity to lives.
Terrific. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for watching. Now, a lot of numbers, a lot of .coms have gone by. We will put that up on the screen for you, as well as a way to contact the Senator at his office if you just stay with us for a couple of minutes. Thanks for watching the Pennsylvania Report with your state Senator, Art Haywood.
People with disabilities may request a transcript of this program by calling area code 717-787-5166. The TTY number is 1-800-364-1581.